Hello, Ida.
Hi, Ram. Long time no see.
Yeah, that's right. Ida, you and a couple of your colleagues were the founders of the Dutch philosophical practice movement. Can you tell us a little bit about it, about how you founded the group and how it developed?
Yeah, I can tell you, basically we started when we were still in university. And it was with Dries and with Art. The three of us did all kind of work groups, and we knew already in the beginning of our study that there was no place for us to work in university itself.
Art is Hogendijk.
At Hogendijk and Dries Boele. We met each other on a kind of totally free event where it was a kind of public event in Amsterdam, and we wanted to. There was a big event on how can you combine education, science, and art. And then there was an open space in those times, and we had kind of flop overs, and the three of us said, we can't work at university, what do we do with philosophy? Why should we study so hard for 5 years, academic study, with all these difficult books to read and not do anything with it? So we really wanted to do something with it in the real life. But we didn't know any examples of that, only in education, or in writing, or as journalist, or in writing a book. So we said, okay, we have to do something else. So we started a kind of group like, we want to have philosophy into the streets, and we want to have the philosophy should be avant-gardistic. So a lot of people in that afternoon came to us and they said, oh, that's a good idea, and we like to join your group. So and then we came back in university, and then our didactic, our teacher there, the professor, he said, I know somebody who started something in Germany, and it was Gerd Achenbach.
Achenbach started in 81, I think.
81,
right?
Yeah.
So you were a year after him.
We were almost the same time. He just started. He just had a press.
Okay.
And then also, of course, what was through other people again, the Socratic dialogue movement in Germany was also kind of big thing. So Achenbach really opened our eyes that we could do something with philosophy. So we got the space in the university through our professor to do a lot of experiments with each other to counsel. So we had there was no video then, but we had a lot of tapes with only the sound. And we really had a lot of tapes to practice each other, what were good questions, what does people help. So we really had a year, I think at least, to study that in university with that professor. And then basically we were not ready for it at all. We didn't know what we were doing, basically. But anyway, we said, okay, we start. So Ad said, I write a book about it because I want to have, to go to and talk with a philosopher. And that book really was got a lot of attention. And at the same time, I was invited to teach philosophy in high school in the Montessori system. So we started with our group first. We had about 10 colleagues and then 15 colleagues. So we tried to get more philosophers who were interested in this, our idea about the philosophical practice.
It must have felt really in the forefront of a new direction.
Oh yes, yeah, it was totally crazy because the thing is, we had no idea because we thought, why do people go to psychologists? I mean, why shouldn't they go to philosophers? Because the questions, we studied philosophy ourselves, all of us, also to open your mind for day-to-day life and problems we had. So moral issues, but existential issues, what is the meaning of life and all kind of big questions. And we didn't think ourselves as ill or sick or something wrong. So we only wanted to know more about what makes the world tick, how does it go in the world, what is important for people.
This is really an issue that I had in mind for a while. Why is it that you started in the format of counseling rather than, I don't know, a group activity or some other kind of activity?
Yeah, I think it really was the kind of we were not really into groups at that moment, but I had next to that counseling thing what we experimented with, I had also groups who did philosophy courses. I was studying myself, but I also had other people who wanted to do something with philosophy, having dialogues. So we did do group sessions, but this was new.
Okay.
And also what I really liked about it then, not anymore, was I never really, for me it was not like helping people so much. I didn't want to be a helper. Otherwise I should have psychology or doing another job. So for me it was more that the discussion and the dialogue with people, one-to-one, how people think, and how you can have a dialogue with them about that thinking. That really was one-to-one, was in that stage very interested for me.
Okay. So how did it continue? After the first experiments, you said that for about a year you experimented with counseling.
And then we went into the markets. So then we put ourselves like philosophical counselors, and then we got people. And after, I must say, after a year or so, and I was also teaching in Montessori, what I said, but next to that, the problem was that through the book of art, I think, also, is that a lot of the people who came to philosophers were people had a divorce, or people had really a kind of serious conflict with their children. So after so many personal kind of issues, I was not so interested anymore. So what I liked with philosophy, I had people who on those times came because they never studied philosophy themselves, but they wanted to know more about philosophy. And with those people I really liked to have a few sessions, because then they read a book, or I gave them articles of Plato, I gave them articles of Nietzsche, and then we discussed the next time, we discussed it. So to really help people like in their thinking was for me more interesting than only the personal problems. Yeah. And in that way it stayed quite a long time like that.
How did it become an association?
Our group went bigger in the beginning, so we had around 45 people, I think, or 50 people who were interested in it, and we had a little magazine we wrote about all kind of philosophical problems in.
You're talking now about 1985 something?
Yeah, 86 till about 86.
Okay.
And then in 88 I started Hotel the Philosopher, because I really wanted...
Tell us a little bit about that.
The thing is that I was a little bit fed up with education, to be a teacher, because you have every time the same group. So in high school, every year you get 14, 15, 16, 17 years again. And I wanted to do something like, I really like to be an entrepreneur for once. And then coincidentally, it came by that my sister and my brother-in-law came back from America to live in Holland, and I thought maybe, and I worked in a hotel next to my studies all the time, in a small hotel. So I don't know how it came, but then suddenly we found a place, what was a hotel. I think, oh, that's nice, we can do that. But the only thing I wanted to have a hotel if it was called the Philosoph, because I was afraid to lose my philosophy if I only went into the business as a hotel. So for me it was very important that it was interactive with each other. So then we had a place with our group to start our, we had a room for meetings and we could see each other. So that was a lot easier, because it's kind of hard in Amsterdam to find a place without any money to see each other. So then we started, and we said we need now an association, because philosophy has a tendency in the world that kind of often here and there kind of strange people come at philosophy. And that was the same in Holland. So we wanted to really also have a demarcation, like philosophy students, and that not everybody, who had a kind of crazy idea could join. So we had a feeling we have to get a demarcation of our group who studied philosophy and who want to do something with practical philosophy, and also to help each other trainings and to help each other in education, but also help each other on clients. So that was when that's the reason really why we went.
So in 1988, that's when it started.
Yes. Then it was we had a place where we often met.
In those first 7 or 8 years, did you have any contact with a German group around Achenbach?
Yes, we went. Yeah, quite a few of our group went to Achenbach in the beginning already, and Achenbach was really nice to talk to us, but he was also a kind of
aloof
authority figure. So he often said, okay, I can't tell you what to do, you have to do it yourself. So he was nice enough, but you could not, he did not want us as pupils. Okay. He did his own thing, and we had to find out our own thing. So that was okay. I mean, otherwise you do the same. You get him. We didn't see him as a master or something, or the teacher.
I see.
But he had a good idea, we thought.
So after you more or less consolidated your view, maybe in the mid-1980s or towards the end, after the establishment of your association, what was your vision of philosophical practice? What did you hope for it to arrive
Of
at?
course, it should be worldwide phenomenon. But for us, it was like because it was really because to educate ourselves. Mm-hmm. So to have this group, and we had then other people who came in. So we had a kind of education, like what do you have to read when you want to be a philosophical practitioner? What kind of philosophers can help you? Mm-hmm. Because I think if you only did logic in your, university time, it's not the best department to go into this personal communication with people. So we really tried to find out what it could be to help other people think, and we really thought it should be a big thing in the world. It could be, especially in Holland, it could be a big thing.
So if I understand you correctly, the vision was in part to educate yourself.
Yes.
But in part also to
educate other philosophers, students. Yeah.
You had a vision of a world change, that it would be a new way of relating to oneself and society, maybe. How do you compare what happened, what you expected, what you hoped for, and what happened later in the 90s or after 2000?
In those times, the reason and arguments and rationality was a lot more in than it is, I would say, nowadays.
Why is that?
Because since the last 10 years, or maybe even 15 years, there is a lot more emphasis on biology, on the brain science. Suddenly the emotions become very important in the world, what I still don't understand, and I don't agree. But everybody now is talking about like the feeling. So we thought with philosophy, people have to interpret their feelings. You still have to think about your making skills. So I still think it's very necessary at the moment that philosophy should have a big place in the world. The only thing is the world is a different place than 30 years ago. So it goes digital, it is very fast, and I'm not sure if a lot of the younger people, and younger I mean then around up till about 40, if they really want to go into this kind of serious dialogues and also read difficult books. I mean, the world is, with Google and everything, it's a lot more. And I'm not against it. I mean, that's the new time. That's okay.
Well, last question. How do you hope philosophical practice will develop in the future? What prospect do you see for philosophical practice in our time?
Yeah, my idea is that, like, I'm sitting here, and I think we have to be very, very careful that it's not old school problematic or an old school kind of thing what is happening. If we don't get young philosophers involved in doing it their own way and learn from us maybe, or do more or less the same, so we need absolutely new ways of doing this philosophical counseling, is my idea.
Okay. Well, let us hope that the new generation takes over and develops it in its own way.
That's what I hope.
Thank you very much, Ida.
Most welcome.